Hello there. Welcome back into the studio. Today we are going to be working on mugs. So here are a couple examples. We're not going to cover everything that there is to talk about with mugs, and a lot of these are just opinions. People have varied opinions on form and function. This is what I found, this is what I like, this is what I like to use, and it's always evolving. I don't think, if you just stall out and don't keep thinking about how things are working, it can get a little bit boring. And so yeah, always thinking about new ideas and the way things work, and changing my handles little bits here and there, changing weights on the pieces. A coffee mug gets a lot of abuse, especially if you want to take it in your car. Maybe it's rolling around on the floor, bumping into things. You go to the diner, you get like the really thick, chunky mugs. It's because people are stirring in there with their coffee spoon, hitting it a lot. They need to be durable. So some of these things, in my opinion, are kind of standard. But the small intricacies of it all, of the thickness of the piece, based on the size of it, how much is it containing, if the pot is too heavy already in general, if it's overweighted, then you throw more liquid in there, it gets too heavy. It can start sucking too much heat out. Just lots of little things. Anyways, two styles of mugs today, and obviously, the possibilities are endless. We're gonna do this one. I call this one just mugs with moves. It's a few moves of my hand to create some of these ridges kind of going up along here. In my work, I really like to do facets. So cutting slices of pieces off. Let's see, that would be something like this. You can see those lines going up, and I just took a cheese cutter and cut up a piece, and it creates a nice texture. So I really like those types of textures, and when I make these, I kind of think of it as a facet going along the way there. These are inspired by... Hi, Carol. These are inspired by a lot of the landscape where I'm at, which is in Northeast Georgia, in the foothills of the Appalachians. I come across and hiking, or even on my drive to bring the kids to school, there's one big rocky outcrop, and it's always very interesting to me. I see all these cuts, drop-offs, different colors, things like that, and I'm not necessarily saying that I'm trying to replicate it exactly, but they're inspirations and things that I bring into my work. So these moves that I want, there's repetitions. There's always repetitions in nature, but there's not necessarily exact symmetry. So I'm not trying to make all my moves symmetrically up and consistent every single time. I want there to be changes in there. These are relatively medium-sized mugs, hold 8 to 10 ounces of liquid. I fit 2 fingers in there pretty easily. Generally, these are pretty simple mugs, but I like simple things. So that's my mugs with moves. And here's another mug that we'll kind of go over. It's been a little while since I made some of these. These are inspired by Mark Hewitt. He's a potter in North Carolina, and this isn't exactly his form, but it's kind of inspired, containing section, and then kind of what I think of as the moving section of the liquid. So a lot of people like these types of things. It doesn't have a large surface area up here to release the heat from the coffee or tea or whatever, hot cocoa. It kind of necks in a little bit. A lot of people think that helps contain the heat so it lasts longer. Stays warm a little bit longer. And yeah, on a lot of my pots I'll put little foot rings on there. And I like the way that it starts the pot. And then also, if I'm putting a glaze that runs a little bit, it's gonna hopefully stop the glaze running off the pot. Kind of a beginning to the piece, and then also holds it into there. One thing that I'm always changing, and we'll see if I ever get it right, is the handle. I make decent handles. They're pulled, they're not hand built, they're pulled from the pot. And always changing the widths of them, the thicknesses of them. For the most part, I think I like the shape that I make, but based on the size of the piece and how much weight it has, will always, in my opinion, determine what kind of handle you're looking to put onto there. It has to match what you're doing with it. I don't make too many mugs that just come in at the top. You can have a mug that really comes in right there, but I don't like the way that it pours, or it comes out of the mouth. I feel like I had to tip it over too far. So a lot of my pieces either come up straight or they flare out a little bit. But anyways, we'll start making a few pieces. And I'll go over a couple of mugs, and then later in the day I'll hopefully make another 100 or so. We have our regular sponge, our makeup sponge, like we always talk about, simple things, just foam cut out, simple tools. Our wooden knife, you can make these from a ruler or a piece of wood. Has a little bevel on it, right there. My favorite wooden knife. All right, so this is a rib. This is, if you get like a kit of tools, you get these really cheap ribs. I don't know what they're good for besides what I'm just showing you. In my opinion, it doesn't work well for a bowl. I have no idea what this curve is for. Anyways, I took that little end there, I took a chainsaw file and I filed it into there, and it creates a little foot ring on the very bottom. With my mugs, I don't cut feet, so it's nice to have something to make that nice little rounded spot there. Flexible kidney shaped rib and the kidney metal rib. I really like making marks on my pots with metal ribs. It's taken some getting used to, but I like the way it moves across the surface. So we got all of our clay knocked up. We're working a 3/4 of a pound. I'll make cups or mugs in half pound, 3/4 pound, 1 pound. And then if I go above 1 pound, I'm usually moving all the way up to like 2 pounds for, the really big ones, kind of oversized mugs. You can do whatever you want. So these first ones, my mug with moves, I am not all that concerned about getting it perfectly centered. I don't want it necessarily to be fully even. We use our thumb to compress the bottom. Now mugs, it's a very intimate pot. And it's a really working pot. Takes a lot of abuse. Right off the bat, I'm setting up my rim. It's gonna have a bevel on there. So this, it starts here and then comes out. That's the way the way that I like it, that it fits in my mouth. You want it to be comfortable on your lips there. And I make sure it's not too thin, otherwise it'll chip. When I'm pulling these, I don't want to have too many thin spots. If you get a thin spot on there, that's most likely where you'll get a crack in there from heat shock. It's the shock from the clay from getting boiling hot water poured into it, and it wants to move a little bit, get a little bigger, and it can definitely crack if you have a thin spot there. Alright, so we have the main height and everything pulled up, reset the rim, want that to be smooth, a nice bevel on it. I slow down my wheel a little bit more. We got our metal rib, and for the first one, I'm following with my fingers on the inside, scraping off some of the slip, and we're starting to get some of these textures put into there. Now, I don't want it just to be symmetrical coming up, so I did it once. Maybe I'll go halfway up, and I kind of look at it in my mirror as it's turning, whether I like that shape or not. And that one's good. These are very spontaneous. If you work on it too long, they lose a lot of their character. They don't want to be overworked. My finish off the bottom. I don't really trim too much. I kind of roll that edge up. So we thought about the shape of our rim, right? We put thought into that, the way that it's gonna to touch our mouth. We don't want a big blunt thing. Kind of want the liquid to pour over the lip. You don't want a big square, sharp corner on there. That doesn't feel very good. So we put a little time into the bottom. Beginnings and endings. If you don't have those, oftentimes your eye does not stay within the piece. It goes over it, and then you're done looking at it. We don't want that. And a lot of these will just have slight changes. So mugs are one of the more intimate things that we make as potters. It's a piece that's in our hands that we actually put our lips to. There's not a whole lot of objects that we put in our mouth on a daily basis. A mug is one of them. So put some thought into it and how you're interacting with it. Then also, the piece that you're making, I don't know, the mug seems pretty simple, but it's a very meaningful thing. Put some thought into it. This is something that you're probably going to be sharing with, as far as like people buying things more than anything else. More people buy pottery mugs than anything. So if you have the one piece that more people are interacting with than anything else, as an artist, you should have some thought behind it, and what it is, and why you're making it, and how you want people to relate to it. Now there's a balance between having it too thick, too thin. You don't want it to be too clunky. You don't want it to be too delicate. I really like my pieces to be used, and I don't want it to be so delicate that people are afraid to use it. So on these pieces, very slightly, they tend to come in the middle, kind of has a little thinner waist to it. I like the way that leaves just a little bit of extra room for my fingers here when you're going to hold on to it. It also has kind of a growing form to it. You know, I think of it, all right, so we talked about, you know, like rock formations, but also if you look at a tree, like the base of the trunk, the roots coming out are nice and wide, and then it comes up into the trunk, and then comes out into the crown of the tree. There's a lot of life into that. So I very slightly try to put a little bit of that life into my mugs as well. One good thing about using a rib to put the shape into the pot is it scrapes off all the slip. Then I scrape my hands off on the edges here, and we can reuse that slip. You know, dry pot, dry hands, easy to lift off the wheel. You save a lot of room by putting them onto a board. So when I'm making multiples of pieces, I have a board over here, and we'll start just stacking them up. It's better than having 100 little bats sitting around, and plus that's expensive. Who wants to buy 100 bats if you want to make a bunch of mugs? I like to lift off pots directly off the wheel as much as possible. You guys, you can use your thumb to compress. Sometimes sometimes I use this to compress. Now for a while there I was putting a swirl on the very bottom, something to kind of look at after you finish your coffee or you're getting down there, you know, you're just playing around with it and you look at it. And then I started worrying about the thick and thin spots and if that would crack there from heat shock, so I stopped doing it. I don't know if that would crack there. I know a lot of potters do that, so they must not be having problems. For these handles, I pull handles directly off the pot. It's efficient, and I like the looks of it. It kind of has a springy look to it. I don't like pulling a handle, putting the shape in it, letting it set up, and then doing your slip and scoring and just setting it onto there. So we tried to put a lot of life and thought, a lot of life into this piece. And in my opinion, I just throw something really static right onto there, and it doesn't quite fit. Not for me, at least. Not happy with the way I do it. You know, some people do it really well. You know, all this whole art and pottery thing is, a lot of it's just opinion. And my opinions on things change from week to week, day to day, month to month, year to year. I contradict myself a lot. Just try not to get hung up on too many absolutes. Things will always change. Alright, this one got a little more moves in there. A little more funky. I just slide, so when I'm with this knife, I have the little bevel right there, and I slide it under my pot and lift up that clay there. Now that kind of created my little foot ring, and it also created a shadow underneath the piece. I like to have a small shadow sitting at the bottom of the pot. It makes it look light and airy, even if it's not. If the pot comes directly and sits there and there's no light under there, it looks as if it's really heavy and weighted to the table. Alright, we'll do one more of these and then we'll try to do a couple of our Mark Hewitt style mugs. Mark Hewitt inspired mugs. And when I'm making pieces like this, I enjoy dedicating, not to say I get to, but I enjoy dedicating a few hours at least to the piece. I start to really learn and get new ideas. Even if I'm just working on the same one over and over, I'll look back and I'll look over at my board of pieces and say, well, that one's much more interesting than the others. And you start moving along with those subtleties that are in that one, and it can be a bit of hard work after a few hours of sitting there trying to, you know, keep knocking out the same piece. But a little bit of hard work can be satisfying. This whole pottery thing it's a lot of fun, but it's not easy. There's nothing easy about it. If it was easy, it wouldn't keep your interest over the years. You get bored with it. Alright, now when I put these marks in here with my metal rib, I slow the wheel down. If it's going too fast, the marks are too tight and close together for the speed that I want to move my hand. Alright, I like that. I like the way that this is moving in that way. Good proportions. Now make sure that everything, there's a little piece of clay or slip on the inside. Do your best to get everything cleaned up as much as you can while it's on the wheel. To get that little piece of slip cleaned up, I just had to dab it with my sponge. You know, if it's sitting at leather hard, I gotta start fiddling with it and scrape it down, smooth it out. Because you don't want a sharp thing on the inside of the mug if you're gonna be washing it and cut your finger. So get everything as finished as much as possible. Right on your wheel. There's always lots to do later. Try to make it easier on yourself. Let's scrape our hands off. Relatively clean hands. We're not getting a bunch of muck and whatnot on the outside of the piece. And we're not grabbing too hard. Just more of letting the friction of the dry pot and dry hands kind of stick to it and lift it up. Looking forward to seeing you in February. Thank you. So in February, hopefully we'll have our heart plates out for Valentine's Day. This is a first Valentine's Day inspired work. These heart-shaped bowls. I think there's some posts on Facebook and Instagram that were put up by Joyce of me making them. There'll be a red glaze. We're doing with those, we're being very bold. I'm going to use a new red glaze that I haven't used before. I wanted something a little bit brighter than the red glaze that I use, which can be a little bit darker, so we'll call that an oxblood, and maybe kind of a flambe. We want something a little bit brighter, and we're just going all in, right? So we made like 50-60 bowls, and we're gonna make this new glaze. We're not testing anything out. We're just gonna do it, and hopefully everything works out well. So, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. All right, so this next one, let's see, working on this shape. I'm gonna have a drink here. Some nice cold coffee. I like cold coffee. Whether it's actually cold brewed or just something that's been sitting out all morning, I still like it. Now with this shape, I haven't made as many of them. It takes me a few times to kind of get into it. At the end of the pole, always compressing the rim, setting up the shape of the rim. Yeah, Dad, I know you don't like cold coffee. It's all good stuff. All right, so I think we got our height here. Right off the bat, we're going to use this rib. Remember, I said that we just took a little chainsaw file to it and knocked out this little bit. That'll create our foot. And we literally just kind of support it on the inside and just push it right into there. And now we have a nice, lovely little rounded area there. Now we'll start there, belly this out, come back in, back out. Don't worry if you don't hit exactly the shape you're trying to every single time. We're learning things about it. maybe something better comes along if you didn't get it exact right. And then also your first and last ones, whether it's a day or a form, they're usually the worst. That's why we work in multiples, trying to catch the good ones in the middle. Alright. And after a little bit, especially on these types of forms, if you're not getting it right, just move on to the next one. We finished this one. It's successful in its own way. If I sit there with the same piece and try to overwork it, push it, and prod it, the clay gets tired, you're never going to get where you want to. Put it aside, move on to the next one. Once a piece is overworked, it gets tired and it starts to lose its liveliness and that energy. It's nice to get it in a few good moves. These pieces won't be out until January. Hopefully we'll have a restock for the website in January. What else is new that's coming up here? We're going to be starting to do individual lessons here at the studio, geared towards intermediate wheel throwing. We'll have the sign up coming up very soon. Be able to go over any problems you may be having, exploring new ideas and forms that you want to try. So that'll be in-person lessons, and I don't know what you think about. Let me know. We could try to set something up so we can do online classes too. Maybe that's another variation of classes that you all would like. If you're not around here and you need a teacher, need to go over some problems, we could both be working on the wheel with the camera and maybe able to work out and help some people. So stay tuned for that. If you have a New Year's resolution, trying something new, you're in the area, maybe you want to learn to make some pots. All right, I like that one. This is so the bevel on the rim for this shape is different than the straight up and down ones. This one already flares out at the top. Now if I put another bevel that's flaring out, it gets to be far too much flaring out. So on this one, I just try to do a nice tapered rim to it. Just nicely rounded. And this form is dealing more with line, looking at the profile of the piece. And I don't like to have throwing marks getting in the way of that. This is just more about outside profile. And so my hand is kind of, there we go. So we're just thinking about drawing lines in this one. So if I had a bunch of throwing marks and things like that, I find it disruptive to the whole form and the profile that we're creating. So this one is more about profile. And the ones that we made before are more about marks and things that we're putting into the clay. And each one of these is different. Now there are some glaze patterns that work on different forms a little bit better. And I've kind of thought about that and worked a lot of that out. So doing brush work on a mug with lots of marks on it can be difficult. Oftentimes I work a little bit better on a smooth surface, you know, putting a brush on there. So, you know, there are glaze patterns like my Golden Prairie where it's layered glazes with wax resist brushwork on there. Those work a lot better on a smooth surface, because then if you have the marks in the clay and you have the shape going on, and then you do brushwork on there and then your glaze, it gets to be too many things trying to work together, but it's not necessarily doing it well. You don't, it feels like you didn't know what to choose. So you just threw it all at it, and it can be tough to focus on something within the piece. So think about that when you're making. What do you want to focus on? You know, is it just some nice glazes that you have? Do you want it if you're doing facets and strong marks and things like on there, is that what you want it to focus on? So then if that's the case, maybe you don't want 5 different glazes layered on each other doing all sorts of things. And that just takes some time and experimenting and oftentimes mistakes to figure all that out. When I'm bellying this out, I'm not doing it with fingertips on the inside. I'm trying to do it with the broader side of my finger here, so it has much more contact and I'm not getting little marks in there. Get the water out of the inside. And the design of the mug, you have to think about where you want your handles to sit as well. You know, do you want it just to come here to there? So you have this little gap here. You could do like a little 1-finger handle. Do you want it to come all the way down? And then how does that shape of the handle affect the profile of the piece? How do you want someone to be able to hang on to it? Little things to think about. I'll do one more here of the bellied mugs and let you all go to try it on your own. Try not to get too upset if things aren't working out. Some days are not for throwing. Some days it just does not work. If it's not working, don't bang your head against the wall and keep trying to do it. Oftentimes it's not going to get any better. Do something else. Sketch, go on a walk. If you got to load a kiln or unload a kiln, wax pots, just do that kind of stuff. It has to get done. We'll recycle some clay. Lots of other work to do. This is only part of the process. There's so many other things to do. You should really, you don't get to spend every waking minute throwing. And it can often be the fun part of it all. So make sure you're in the right mindset for it so it's enjoyable. That all shows through.
Morning.
Morning.
Kind of looking right now. I think I know what I want, but you probably don't have it anymore.
Here we go. Let's see, this one, not quite there yet. It's close. This was kind of one of those things where if you're not getting the shape, you can keep hitting it, You may not get there. Like I said, you know, the first and last one, those usually aren't your best ones. It's those middle ones that you catch. So, didn't quite hit the mark with what I wanted on that one. But we're gonna move on. Don't need to bang my head against the wall. And here's this last one. We'll just kind of hold it up there for you. There it is. All right, so that's about it for today. I gotta throw about, we'll see, about 85, 90 more today. Gotta get it done. Hope you all learned something and had a good time watching. Talk to you later. Bye.